guys, it's Naomi from Jasmine Pottery Studios. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a Highland Cow using air drying clay. Everything we use in this tutorial is available in a handy kit. These kits are available on Etsy and on our website. So I thought we could begin with just unboxing a kit so you can see what's inside and just talk through what we're going to need to craft the Highland Cow today. So I'll just start by opening the kit. So inside our kits we have a paint palette, some acrylic paints, a paintbrush, some clay pottery tools. So there is a selection of 5 tools and some sealer. And of course your air drying clay. So if you are getting the air drying clay from us, we also have some instructions just on the back of the kit, so you can refer to that as we crafting as well. Just a few extra things that you might need as well that aren't included in the kit are some water and one of these tools here. So this is just a clay extruder tool. You don't necessarily need it, but it can be quite handy. So we do have these available on our Etsy page, but you know, they're quite easy to pick up off Amazon as well. Okay, so let's get started crafting our cow. So let's begin by opening up your air drying clay. So the clay is wrapped up in some plastic. This is to prevent it from drying out. So before we start, if you just start by laying out your full block of clay, but keeping your plastic wrap handy because we are going to need to use it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to section out the different parts of the clay to the different proportions of the cow. So you can see here on the instructions, we're going to section it into 3 parts to start with. So if we're looking at our clay in this direction, we're going to start by just drawing 3 lines. If you're not quite happy with the line that you've done, you can always rub it out and change it. So there want to be 3 equal parts. So what we're going to do is, this bit is going to be for the body, so we can write body on here. So we're going to split this in 2. We've got the head, and then we've got fur, and then nose and horns. What we're going to do to start with is we're going to cut out the body. So we'll just cut out this section of your clay here. And this is the bit that we're going to be working on. So with these bits, we can just pop those back in your plastic wrap. So it is good to label them, then when you do come back to it, you remember which bit's which. Right, okay. So for the body, what we want to start by doing is making it into a ball. So to do that, a little technique is if you use the palm of your hand and you hit it in each corner, then you're gonna start to get that ball shape. So I'll just show you how that looks. So make sure that you keep turning and hitting it. Don't be afraid to apply quite a bit of pressure as well. Once it starts to go into that ball shape, we've got lots of big lines and marks, so we're just going to start just smoothing those out with your finger. So once we've made the ball, what we want to do next is make it into more of an oval shape. So just roll it just a little bit so it's more of an egg. So what I'm doing here is I'm just giving it a roll and then I'm just cupping my hands around to create that egg-like shape. So once we're happy with the shape of the body, what we're going to do next is we're just going to give it a gentle tap on the base, just to make the base of it flat. And then next you're going to need your loop tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to scoop out some of the bottom, so leaving at least a finger's gap between the edge of the base, and then we're going to cut. We're just going to create 2 or 3 scoops, so we've got just over halfway. So don't worry about these little bits on that appearing on your tool. They are the fibres from your air drying clay, so this is what makes it stronger and stops it from crumbling. So these are what give your air drying clay stability. So once you have gone about halfway in with your loop tool, what we're going to do next is we're going to use the pinch pot technique just to widen this body out. So with your thumb, if you just push your thumb in to that gap, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to squeeze around the top to start with. So all I'm doing here is I'm just squeezing that clay, and you can see that's starting to get a bit wider, but this is still a finger's gap around. So you just need to be really careful that you're not pushing too much on the bottom bit, and all the pressure is from the top. So we're going to pinch and turn, and just keep that rhythm going with the pinching. But we're keeping this bit nice and flat. And if it starts to get a bit too misshapen, you can always give it another tap. Right, so just make sure that we're not going too thin anywhere, and this is just basically going to stretch that clay out so it's a little bit taller, but it still stays in that oval shape. So now you're left with this egg, this like turtle shell shape. That is what we're aiming for, so don't worry if things do start to get a little bit strange when we're doing these Highland cows, but just trust the process. They do look like cows in the end. So next, once we've done that, we're going to move on to the head. So we'll just start by taking out the piece that we've labelled up for the head. So any spare bits like this as well, you can just save in your bag. Right, okay, so for the head, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to make it into a ball. So same technique, we're just going to keep turning that ball shape. You can roll it around a little bit in your hands, and then we can smooth out any marks with your finger. Right, okay, so now we just need to test that the head is the right size for the body. So we always want it to be slightly bigger than what you want the final head to look like. When we blend it onto the neck, we do lose a little bit of the size of the head. So just slightly bigger than what you want it to be. So this is a good size. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how to join the pieces together. So because we're using air drying clay, we're going to use water to join them, but you can mix up slip as well if you do want to use slip. So all slip is a mixture of clay and water together. If you did want to do some slip, you can use some of your little bits like this, mix it with some water, and it just get like a thick mixture of clay and water, and that's just like glue, but you know, water works just as fine as well. And this clay that we provide is quite a wet clay anyway, so just a bit of water is totally fine for this. Okay, so the first step that we need to do is we need to do what we call scoring. So we're just going to create a crisscross pattern on the bottom of the head and on the body, where we're going to attach the body as well. So we want to have both pieces with these crisscross lines. And then next we're going to use the water, or you can use slip if you want to mix up some slip. So I'm just going to grab my water here and I'm just going to put a little bit of that water on both of these parts here, just so you can see it already starts to create a little bit of a slip mixture on there as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to place the head onto the body, and then the trick is with this is a certain way to hold it, which is helping it to become more secure. So we're holding it from the top with our index finger here, and then the rest of the body is held in the hand like this. So then when we flip it over, we've got firm grip on the bottom of the head and also in here on the body as well. So what we want to do next is we want to blend this together. So you're going to need this tool here, which has this rounded tip, and then holding your cow like this so it's secured on the top. What we're going to do is we're just going to blend down that head onto the body. So you really do take quite a bit from the head. So what you're doing is you're using the rounded edge of this, so just think of it as a bit of an extension of your finger, and you're just pushing down, moving that clay down from the head onto the body, and just getting all around that so you can't see that join anymore, and this just stops it from coming apart when it dries. So once we've created this seal, we can just neaten it up with a finger, just moving your finger around and kind of smoothing all those little lines that we've just made. Now we know that head's firmly attached, what we're going to do is just reshape this head a little bit. So we want it to be like, not quite like a ball, we want to bring that nose bit a little bit more forward, but not too much, otherwise they can look like a dog. So all I'm doing here is giving it a little squeeze on each side so the clay starts to move forwards a little bit. So just very lightly bringing that clay to the front just a little bit, and then just blending with my finger so it's a little bit more of a we've attached the head. What we're going to move to doing next is attaching some legs. So you should have marked out a piece here for the legs. So with the legs, we don't want them to be too long because the clay is very wet. We want to make sure that it's not too long, too tall. We just want them to be kind of like short, stubby legs. So if I hold up this one here, you can see they're not very long. They're just like little legs. Most of it's covered by the hair anyway. So what we want to do with the legs is cut this into 4 pieces. So if your clay is very misshapen, you can give it a little tap to get it into a square. So we've got this shape, and then we're just going to cut that into 4. I usually do it like a cross, so I'm doing 4 parts like that. You can do them long ways if you want, but I found this way you get the smaller leg size that we're looking for. So once we've got our 4 sections, what we want to do next is create 4 cylinders. So to make the cylinder, what we're going to do is we're going to give them a little roll like this in your hands to get them round, and then the trick is with this is tap tap on the bottom, tap tap on the top, roll, and then just repeat that process over and over. So you're tapping it to get it to be smaller, so tapping the top and the bottom, so it's really important that you tap in both sides, and then rolling it like this is getting the cylinder. So roll, tap, tap, roll, tap, tap, roll, tap, tap. So you can see now how it started to go into that cylinder shape. So you just want to repeat this for all 4 of the little squares. Oh, that's fine. Right, okay. So once you've made the 4 pieces, we're just going to test how they sit on your cow. So we want to make sure that they're going to go right at the front and right at the back of your cow. So I'm just going to turn it to the side so you can see. You want to make sure that those legs are right at the back and right at the front like this. And then what we're going to do next is just go ahead and attach those using the scoring and slipping technique. So if you need to adjust them, you can trim a little bit off, you can change the size if they're too tall or if they're too small. You can just have a little think about the proportions of it. So when we are attaching these pieces, it is a little bit tricky. So I like to do one piece at a time. So I'll do my scoring. So I'm gonna do my scoring on there. And then I'm gonna do the scoring on here as well. A little bit of slip on each side. Support it on the top. And then we're gonna use that same tool like we did with the head and just blend some of that leg in. A little bit of the water on there, or the slip on there. And then just blend that one in. So it does become quite tricky when you come to blend the last legs because obviously you've not got a great deal of room. So now you should have something that looks a little bit like this, where they do start to look a little bit strange, but just trust the process, they will look like a cow. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to make it look even more strange, and we're going to start adding the nose and the horns. So we've got a section here for the fur and then a little section here for the nose and the horns. So we probably won't need all of this. So just start by cutting that off. So you just need a tiny little bit. You really don't need much. It's probably already too much.
We're going to start by
see, it's just going to go here on the front. So I'm going to cut this in half again. Okay, so I'm just going to make this into a ball. And then once I've made the ball, I'm just gonna squash it down a little bit so it's flat, and then we're gonna cut out a little kind of section, like a little triangle, so it's kind of like this. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add that to the front of our cow. So they do start to look a little bit strange at this point. Just be careful when you're working on your cow on his front that you're not folding his legs underneath. So I'm just going to do some scoring on the front of the face here where I'm going to attach the snout. And there's a little bit of water. And then we're going to blend this front bit in. So you can see it just adds a little bit more definition to the cow's face. So this is a good point to decide whether you want to add a tongue for your cow. If you want to make a little tongue, just taking off a little bit, flattening it out with like a tongue shape. So just a very, very small bit with this. And then you can just place it in this little gap here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place that to the side a little bit, so it looks like he's licking up, and I'm just going to blend it down to the bottom. I'm not using any slip or any water, just blending that down. And then with this bit here, we're just going to do another little lower lip. So I'm just rolling a little coil like this. So we want it to be like a semicircle, and then it's just going to kind of go underneath here. So you might want to test it, cut any off if you need to. You really, really don't need much for this bit. So that's just going to sit underneath like this. This is going to be his bottom lip. So then you're just blending that down. So next what we're going to need is this tool here. So this is for making the holes for the nose. So just making some holes there for his little nose. So now we have attached the nose. I should have something that looks like this, so it looks very strange. We want to add some horns. So I'd still say this is quite a big bit of clay, so I'm just going to cut it in half again, and then I'm just going to use half of this for the horns. So obviously it depends on how big you want the horns to be, but the main important factor of this is that they're not too thin, otherwise they're very prone to breaking. So when we're making the horns, we want to roll it like this in the palm of your hand, so it's going up to a point at the top, but staying nice and thick down at the bottom here. So all I'm doing is just rolling towards the top, so it's staying nice and thick. Give it a little tap if you need to as well. So we're just going to test the size of the horns to the size of the cow. So don't worry too much about the shaping of it yet either. We just want to make sure that they're the right size. So if they're quite big, you can just trim them down a little bit. So I'm going to trim these down because I don't want them to be too big. So you can do some scoring and just a little bit of slip, and then just blending that horn on. So you can use your tool as well to blend it. You want it blended all the way around, just so that horn's nice and secure. Then we want to do the same with this side. Make sure you've got them in the even place as well. So we want to make sure that they're looking nice and symmetrical. And just blend in that horn all the way on. Right, okay. So now I've got the horns attached, what we're going to do next is make some ears. So you should still have plenty of this clay left, but you know, you might, if you've cut some off, you might not need to get your extra clay. To make the ears, we're going to do cut off two little squares, and we're just going to shape them into like a semicircle. So one side flat and then the other side round. So you can see that they're just kind of in front, just about here on the cow. So they're about here on the cow. So we're going to have two little semicircles, so just with your fingers making it round at the top and then flat at the bottom. So with the ears, we just want to make sure that they're not too big. If they are too big, we can cut them down a little bit with your knife tool. And then we're going to do that scoring just on there where we're going to attach it on the cow, and then we're going to attach those ears. So when we are attaching the ears, just blend it down onto the cow so it's got a good join. Yeah, so we want it nice and blended in. And then once you have blended it in, just taking this tool here, and then you just kind of creating that little hole using this tool. So you're blending it down at the top, and then this bit is where you make the hole, so you kind of create the lobe of the cow. Yeah, you can see how that's starting to change. So you can always let your clay dry a little bit. If it's super wet and sticky, it's good to, you know, allow it to harden a little bit, and then it's not moving every time you're touching it. So it can be a little bit easier to work with clay when it's reached what we call the leather hard stage. So if you are leaving it a little bit, you just want to make sure not to leave it too long. So you want it to be like firm, so you could, but still moldable. Alright, okay. So now I've got like creature like this. Yeah, we've got the ears, we've got the horns, we've got the body. What we're going to do next is we're going to work on creating the fur. So for the fur, I'm just going to show you how to hand roll a coil, but you know, you can use the extruder like I mentioned as well. So just to show you how to hand roll, you're taking a little bit of clay and just starting by rolling it into a sausage in your hands, and then starting at the tips of your fingers all the way to the palm of your hand, you're going to gently just glide over. So you're kind of doing this motion, not this. You're going like a glide. So straight over, just glide in that clay so it starts to stretch. As it gets longer, you can stretch out those fingers, just making sure not to focus in one bit for too long. So you can see how much I've stretched that clay and how far it's gone. So you really don't want these coils to be very thick. So once it's got to a certain length, you might want to kind of cut it down. You know, you might get a few pieces out of this. I'm going to cut this into 4, and then I'm going to roll them a little bit more as well. These are just going to be the bits that we attach as fur. Okay. So what we're going to work on next for the cow is just attaching the fur. So we want to make sure that this clay is all nice and scored. So you can use this tool here to do the scoring. So just with your tool, just creating a real rough surface all along where we're going to attach those coils to. And then what we want to do is paint a little bit of that slip on there. And when we're attaching them, we want to make sure that they're sticking. So we want to blend it at the top a little bit there, and then we're going to follow that coil all the way down until it gets near the bottom, and then we're going to stick it down at the bottom as well. This is so there's no like overhanging coils, so when we touch it, it doesn't become too brittle or break at all. So I'm just going to grab some of the coils that I've pre-made here. So just show you those. So these have been done with the extruder. So I'm just going to show you how to use the extruder if you do want to use one of those as well. So with the extruder, what I do, there's a few different types that you can get as well. These ones can be a little bit fiddly when you're twisting them all around, but what you want to do is just, this is the fastest way that I found, just taking a little bit of your clay, rolling it into a sausage, just pushing that in there, and then you just push your tool all the way in and it starts to extrude it out like this. So I'm just going to work away on attaching those coils next. Just making sure that they're all nice and flat down. And we're putting plenty of that water on there as well. So anything that kind of overhangs or sticks up becomes very brittle when it's dry. So just make sure that when you're sticking it down, you're sticking it right against the body of the cow. just going to show you up close. You know, you can add some more to it as well if you want. Okay, so once you've made your Highland Cow, you want to allow it to air dry naturally. You don't need to put it in an oven or anything like that. You just need to allow it to air dry. It does take between 48 to 72 hours to fully dry. A good place to leave it is on a windowsill or in a warm room. In some sunny climates it can take less time to dry, but you know, on cold, damp days it can take a little bit longer. So to check that it's dry, you want to make sure that it turns like a light grey colour. I'm going to allow my clay to dry out now, and I'll be back to show you how to paint it. Okay, so now we've allowed the cow to dry, you can see it's gone a lot of a lighter grey colour. So now we're ready to paint it. So in your kit you should have a selection of paints. So you've got these 4 colours here, and then you've got a sealer as well. We've also got a paint palette and a brush. So when we're thinking about the cow, we want to mix up some different oranges and browns. So in your paints, if you start by just opening those up, and we've got, I'm just going to start to make kind of a deep orange colour. So with your paint palette, when you open your paints, there's a sharp side on the bottom. You just pierce that into the top, and I'm going to mix up some colours. So I'm going to start with my lightest colour first, which is my orange. Now you really need to be careful with this orange because it's quite vibrant, so you just want to have a little bit. So we'll go 1 part orange and we'll go 2 parts brown. Now I've put the paints in the well, what I do is I bring them down to the centre and give it a little mix. So now we've got this like orangey brown colour. Then the other colour I'm going to mix is kind of a lighter variation of this colour. So I'm going to go for 2 parts brown, 1 part orange, and then I'm going to take my white as well and give that a little mix in. So I'm going to do 1 part white as well. And then just give that a little mix. You can see we're getting this lovely orangey brown colour. And then what else I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up just like a light brown. So I'm going to do 1 part brown, 1 part white, and just giving that a little mix too. You know what, I'm actually going to add more white to that one. So we've got this lovely kind of biscuity beige colour as well. So when we start with painting, what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that all of these are nice and flat down and we're not going to be getting it anywhere. So I'm going to start with my darker colour, which is going to be the base colour here. So I'm just going to grab another paintbrush actually, just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so I'm going to go with this as my main body colour for the cow. So I'm just going to jump straight on and start filling in all of the colour, all of the cow with this colour here. I'm going to go for that again, so you can always write it down if you're unsure. So it was 2 parts brown, 1 part orange, and then 1 part white as well. dry just a little bit and then we're going to work on our darker colour. So here is the darker colour that I mixed up earlier. So what I'm going to do is just start highlighting some of the fur. So just bringing that highlights, low lights even. Okay, so I'm just going to go through next painting the face. So you want to get your lighter colour that you mixed, and then we're just going to go over the ears, just remembering that this is our base coat. So for this next bit you'll need a little bit of pink for the tongue. So if you've got a little bit of red or a little bit of pink, you can use that. So it's just a tiny, such a small amount, just need a really little bit. We're going to mix it with the white as well. Don't worry if you don't have any other paints, I'm going to go through that with you as well. So if you don't have any paints that you could use, like a red, we're just going to make it out of a little bit of the orange. So just a tiny bit of orange and a lot of the white. So if you are mixing up the pink with a little bit of red, just take a little bit of it and mix it with quite a lot of the white. So it's good to put it in the corner and then move it down into the middle. So you've got this like pinky colour. If you're mixing it from the orange, you want to just take a little bit of the orange and you're just going to bring that white down into it. It just goes a very light beigey colour. So I'll just show you what the light beige colour goes like. It is obviously a lot better if you can get your hands on a little bit of the red. You can see, so this is what the light beige colour looks like. It just looks quite subtle. Okay. You just need to make sure that when you mix this colour, you're mixing it light enough that it looks different to the colour you've done for the face, because they are quite similar, so you need to make sure that it's a lot of a lighter tone. Okay, right. So next what I'm going to do is just allow that to dry a little bit, and then we're going to start adding some highlights and some low lights to the fur. So it's still a little bit wet, so I'm just going to allow it to dry just a little bit longer. Okay, so next we're going to move on to doing the horns. So you'll just need white for this one. And if you have got a smaller brush, you may want to use it. Okay, so it's just straight up white on the very top. Sometimes you need to do a few coats as well, allowing them to dry between each layer to get a more vibrant, solid colour. Okay, so next I'm just going to talk a little bit about like highlighting and low lighting the fur. You can just straight up use some of your brown to do some darker parts, so just highlight in on the cow where you think it would have some lower tones to the fur. So this is good for doing like on the bits that it dips in a little bit, where the coils are layered up, and just gives it a little bit more like movement to it. So you don't have to be too methodical about it, just getting a nice coverage to just give the illusion of different depth of tone. So now I'm happy with filling in some of these gaps. What we can do next is just mix a little bit of black in there as well, just to give it a very slight darker texture. So it's just a very tiny little bit. So we're just adding a very, very tiny bit. Mixing that with your brown just to create a dark brown. So at this stage it's good not to have too much paint on your brush, just so you can kind of dry brush it on a little bit more. Right, okay, so once you're happy with all your low lights, what we can do next is start adding some light to the fur. Okay, so I'm just going to add some highlights now. So I'm just using a little bit of white, and then I'm going to use a little bit of my leftover beige colour as well. So again, not too much on your brush, you just highlight in where you think that light would be hitting cow's fur. So it's usually on the top, and then with your white you can also just go in and highlight any little bits that you think. Right, okay, so just the last bit now is just doing that nose. So we just want a tiny bit of the black on a really thin brush, and what we want to do is just get in those nostrils.
Okay, now I've allowed the cow to dry, I'm just going to paint it with the sealer. So this sealer will make it go white when you first paint it on, but it does dry clear. Then I'm just going to allow that to dry.